The agent to do that, it needs to be credentialed and it needs to be authorized. And then it has to pass authentication tests. Okay. So the skills file is where all this stuff lives. And this is like a happy hunting ground for hackers. It creates an attack surface for hacking, even with your cloud-based. All right. So the first thing you need to do is you need to have some agents and you need to be writing them yourself and experimenting with them. How are you going to do that? Okay, so this whole thing is runs on open with something called OpenClaw, which is a platform for hosting and authoring agents and then putting them to work in execution 24 hours a day. All right. Well, guess what? OpenClaw is kind of hard to install. And if you think it's easy, you're going to find out it isn't. There's a lot of configuration and setup to do. It's like we used to text by hitting 3 characters to put one letter on the screen. Remember that one? That's kind of where we are now. You have to use a command line interface. You have to download it. You have to have the proper machine. And then you also have to isolate it on your network, or hackers are going to get through to your machine that you use for everyday work. That will be a disaster for you. So the cheapest way to get started is to use something like MyClaw or Hyperbox. MyClaw is basically running a single OpenClaw in a single agent so you can get started right away. It's like 20 bucks a month. And then Hyperbox, what they do is they have a dedicated piece of hardware for you and your agents. So you don't have to set it up at home. It's isolated, it's safe, it's secure. It comes partially pre-configured. It's much easier for you to get started. It's 20 or 30 bucks a month. And you can have multiple agents run on Hyperbox, okay? So I'm advocating for you to look at one of these cloud-based things, and there's many more. All right, so like I said, if you get it like a Mac Mini or some other kind of small computer, and you put it on your own network, first thing is any hacker who can get at your agents can get at your network, and that if they can get at your network, they can get at you. So you have to have like a subnet set up at home off to the side where this thing's totally isolated. So if hackers come in and they get to your agents, they can't get to you. Do you understand what I'm saying there? Okay, so that's number one. Um, the other thing is that there's an attack surface with the skills files. With the skills files, basically, which we'll get into in a minute, this skill.md is a markdown file, and it describes a specific skill. So it has like it has a way for them to log in to say your Slack or your Trello and go read that stuff and maybe log into like for example, log into Trello, get some data, log off, log into Slack, and post it there because it's something that you normally do. For the agent to do that, it needs to be credentialed and it needs to be authorized, and then it has to pass authentication tests. Okay, so the skills file is where all this stuff lives. And this is like a happy hunting ground for hackers. It creates an attack surface for hacking, even with your cloud-based um, agents. An example of this is you can buy pre-baked agents, pre-configured, pre-built agents. You can also buy pre-built skills for your own homegrown agents. But some of those skills are very lightly vetted. And when you look at them, they look good, but they might have unprintable characters that you can't see, but your agent can see and interprets them as instructions. So there's all kinds of risks with this skills file, okay? And you're going to have to go and learn about that. Okay, so everything in Agentic AI is programmed in English in a Markdown file. And Markdown is simply like HTML light. It's very lightly structured. See this thing right here? This is a second heading. See hash hash? A single hash would be an H1. A double hash is an H2. Do you get what I'm saying there? It's like super light HTML. And look, it's just plain English. This is something from what's called the SolMD file, which I'm going to explain in a minute. It's part of what defines what the agent is. And you're telling them how to communicate. Be concise. Use code examples. Default to the tech stack already in the project. And ask clarifying questions. You see how we're telling them how to interact with us? This is in the skills file or the Sol file. This is Markdown. So everything's English in Markdown. It's not that difficult. Okay, you just have to know how all the pieces parts fit together. Now, configuring Markdown, I put a couple links in here so you can learn about Markdown. You want to spend 10 or 15 minutes learning about Markdown. Get some clue about it before you start working on the different MD files to build an agent. Okay, now let's get into the files. Here's a soul file. It defines the agent's personality. For every one of these slides, I'm giving you a link that you can do a deeper drill down on. Okay, so click through here. Next one, the agents file. This is the core operating instructions, the rules, the boundaries, how it's going to manage memory, how it's going to handle security, task execution. It's all the high level stuff that the agent needs to know to basically boot. And it's loaded every single time you start it. Okay. And here's an example on that. Um, Here's another file, identity. This is the role, scope, how it presents itself externally to the rest of the world. It's almost like its personality. You can code that in Markdown in this file. Okay, so if you want it to be pleasant, if you want it to be polite, you can tell it to do that. You can tell it to also be direct at the same time and all this kind of stuff. Okay. Now, the user file, that describes you. So it's telling the agent, hey, here's a little bit about me. You want to interact with me in the following ways. You might even give him like your ocean profile or your MBTI, because that will help the agent to know how to communicate with you. Okay. Very, very useful. And you can go very, very deep on this defining of who you are as a user. And then tools. So this is like all different tools that you can call. So this would have, different utilities maybe on your computer or logins to tools that do things on the web, that kind of thing. You're telling it what tools are at its disposal, right? And then this is about how it manages memory, what it learns over time. If you don't put something in the memory file and explain it, it's like starting it fresh from the beginning every time you start it up. So you want some persistence. This enables persistence from session to session. Okay. And then the skills file. This is the attack surface for hackers. You need the skills for the agent to do anything useful around autonomy because it's gonna employ skills to do autonomous work. You're gonna basically authorize it to use these skills, and these skills include the account, the logon, the password, um, all that kind of stuff. And of course, hackers love that, right? Because this is where all the authorizations are. So you're going to focus on the skills file in terms of security because it's an obvious attack vector for hackers, but you do have to have them. In skills, you can download skills from libraries around the web. Be very, very careful with that. Warning, be very careful. You'll regret it later if you're not. Okay, and here's some more information on the skills file and what you can do. Okay.